Hey everyone, Claire Wasserman here, founder, author, and host of Ladies Get Paid. And today we're diving into a coaching session that I think is going to resonate with so many of you. I want you to imagine this. You've just gone through a major career upheaval, the kind where everything you built gets decimated overnight and you have to scramble to find something new. You land on your feet, you get a new job, but 5 months in, your boss announces she's leaving. And now you're standing at this fork in the road. You could step up into a big leadership role, or you could play it safe and shrink. But here's the thing, you feel completely unequipped. You're dealing with imposter syndrome. You're in a weird organizational culture, and you just asked for a raise 2 weeks ago and got the vaguest possible response, quote, "We'll take it under consideration." Oh, and the kicker? You can see exactly where you want to go in your career, but you have no idea how to actually get there. This is my client B's situation. And honestly, it's a situation I see all the time. That feeling of I know what I want, but I don't know how to bridge the gap. It's one of the most common things I hear from the women I coach. So, in today's episode, you're going to hear me coach B through this in real time. We talk about why confidence isn't a destination you arrive at, how to stop trying to achieve your way to information, and why the people you think are your enemies at work might actually just be people trying to navigate the same chaos you are. We also get into some really practical stuff, the morning practice that can change your entire day, how to do a listening tour, even if your organization is hierarchical and weird, and how to build a strategic case for your worth that's based on business value, not just how hard you're working. And here's what I love about this session. B has this moment where she realizes that she's been thinking about her career as me versus them instead of we're all trying to figure this out together. And that shift alone, game changing. So, whether you're in a career transition right now, you're stepping into a bigger role and feeling scared, or you just know that you want something different but can't figure out the next step, this episode is for you. Also, don't forget, check out clairewasserman.substack.com. The link is in the notes below for an accompanying post that lays out all of the key insights, plus a 7-day progress plan that turns those insights into action steps so that you can get moving. All right, let's get into it. Thanks so much for being here today. I'd love to kick things off and have you read aloud what you submitted in your application to be coached, and let me know if there's any additional context that would be helpful for me to know for our session today.
I wrote in, I've had a chaotic career year. I was a proud federal worker, and then I watched my portfolio get decimated in just a matter of days. I resigned just a few days before my office was eliminated and was able to find a new job. But in the 5 months, but about 5 months in, the senior director who I reported to announced she was leaving. So I feel like I'm at a fork in the road where I could seize this opportunity and step into a big leadership role, or I could shrink. I feel unequipped and overwhelmed to step into this leadership role. Plus, my org is a little weird. This all just happened, so I'm not really sure yet, but I've been trying to build some allies within my organization. I've done some journaling and some talking with friends about what I want out of this transition. I think I could use some help and guidance building my confidence, getting clear on how I want to navigate the next step, and then a plan for how to actually do it. I feel a disconnect between what I want and how to get there, but I don't know how to bridge the gap.
Yeah, I thought that last sentence in particular really resonated with me. And also, I know with other people watching and listening, I'm going to just say it again, quote, I feel a disconnect between what I want and how to get there, but I don't know how to bridge the gap. And that is exactly what Ladies Get Paid is about, what Work in Progress is about, and why we're here today. Quick question though, before we dive in, any additional context you think would be helpful for me to know? And I know you submitted this a little while ago, so you may have updates.
Yeah, I guess the one additional update is that I asked for a salary adjustment to match the sort of increased responsibilities, and it's an open question as to whether or not my organization is willing to do that.
And how did they respond?
That they'll take it under consideration.
And when was this?
About 2 weeks ago.
Okay. Just a quick note, anytime that you ask for a salary adjustment and you're given kind of abstract answer, we'll let you know. We never want open-ended. we really need to understand their process. How do they determine who, how, and when gets a raise? And as it relates to you, what does timelines look like? Are there things they need to see from you? Also, putting a next check in on, hey, calendar invite for 1 month from now to just discuss, if not make the decision, right? So you have to hold them accountable to a next step if they're not giving you
Mm-hmm.
one off the bat. But let's talk about these two paths, this fork in the road. I'm going to read aloud one of the things you said, and let's use that as the jumping off point for our session today. You said, I feel like I'm at a fork in the road where I could seize this opportunity and step into a big leadership role, or I could shrink. By the way, when you said it out loud, when you read this, it totally sounded like drink instead of shrink, which I
Oh,
laughed at, which
I get
I'll
that.
make sure it's corrected on the captions. But when I heard drink, I was like, I know that's not what she meant, but it does sound funny. All right. Drink and drink. Okay. So let's visualize these two paths. I love this imagining the road and the two sort of, I love imagining the road and then the fork. Okay. When we visualize paths, and by the way, I interjected and said two paths, but honestly, there could be more than two. Actually, there always is more paths than we think there are. So for you, let's take a moment to really imagine this fork in the road and where all the different paths might lead and what's happening on the outside, what's happening around you, then what's happening on the inside and how you're feeling about it. But let's start with the outside, with the paths. If you could describe to me all the different paths as you currently see them, let's confirm that we've explored as many paths as possible before we start figuring out which ones feel most aligned and then the roadmap to actually following it.
Okay. Yeah. So I think like one path is to do nothing,
Okay.
to like be in my job and not really step up to the opportunity, but to, yeah, just, yeah, I
Continue,
guess sort of,
continue as the job, continue the job as they have presented to, continue the job as they have presented it to you.
yeah.
All right, that's path A. Okay, what's path B?
I think path B is to take a step up and step into more of a leadership role, both like officially and unofficially at my organization, and really take over some of the things that my senior director was doing, including the strategic positioning and advocacy of our department.
Okay, all right. Path number C, letter C. Okay, it's
Letter
definitely a Friday.
C.
All right, path C. What
Um,
another option?
yeah, I could leave my job or start to look for something else.
Okay, all right, all right. Let's just stick with those paths. When
Yeah.
you think about, all right, I'm going to start with the path that you said you want, which is stepping up perhaps first unofficially and then officially. I'll define that as you're doing the work, but not getting the compensation or the title adjustment. Officially would mean, yes, you get the title change and salary adjustment. Is this the one in your body you feel pulled towards?
Yeah, I think so. I think I feel like excited, though nervous about the opportunity.
Okay, great. Okay, let's talk about. I want to confirm though, I feel a disconnect between what I want and how to get there, meaning this is what you want, but you don't know how to achieve it. Confirming that's still where you want to focus this conversation.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
All right, great. All right. Let's just talk about in a perfect world, what's happening or what would you like to see happen that would allow this path to unfold as effortlessly as possible?
yeah. I definitely think the compensation piece and title adjustment, although I don't know, that feels less like, yeah, senior director versus director feels a little more arbitrary
Mhm.
than, yeah. But then I think also then the like internal support to achieve, take the department where I want to go. And
Okay.
I, yeah,
Yeah, okay. 'Cause so there's the title and salary adjustment, but you just admit here that changing from, I don't know, director to senior director, it's like pretty negligible. It might be helpful for the next job that you get though. But
mhm.
we're saying that it's actually a little bit less about what the title and salary is and maybe a little bit more about your ability to follow through on initiatives, correct?
Yeah. And I will say in my organization, so I guess like the semantics of the title matter less to me than the compensation. But in my organization, the jump in salary between a director and a senior director is pretty big.
Oh, okay. Okay. Okay, great.
So,
I'm going to put salary and title. We're going to put that in one bucket and we'll tackle it. But let's talk about
yeah,
doing the work. Okay. Doing the
yeah,
great work. And right now, tell me all of the obstacles in the way of your ability to show up and kick ass at this job.
yeah. I think okay, so I think that there's like me obstacles,
Okay.
and I think that there's external obstacles. So the me obstacles, one is self-doubt, imposter syndrome, like sometimes feeling not qualified or capable of doing this job.
I'm writing that
And I
down.
think,
We'll get to that.
yeah.
What are the external obstacles?
And I think another internal obstacle, I just feel like I've had a lot of career hits this year that
Yeah.
like I made a transition before I was ready to. I like did a lot of really great work that I cared about, and that then this big external force came and was like, just kidding, we don't actually care about any of those things that you've just spent 4 years working on in the federal government.
Do you
So
feel like all this work was erased? Like everything that you, and I'm not talking about the people you served or the outcomes you had, but like the literal work and the effort and the skills and the experiences and the wisdom and the learnings you had, are those gone?
I guess not. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The self doubt, we've got to see proof. Here's the thing, it's not just in your head. Like you genuinely feel like something is lacking. And that's because you are focusing on the thing that maybe appears to be lacking. We've got to readjust where you're putting your attention. And in order for me to do that with you, I want to look at all the stuff you've actually done, the problems you've solved, and the skills and the wisdom you've gained. And then why is that important for your current job? How does that even financially benefit them? Okay. And then that becomes the strategic case that you make for the raise and the promotion. But first, it's what is everything that you bring to the table? By the way, perhaps as an outsider, because you
Mhm.
mentioned feeling like you had built all this stuff, but then there was a transition before you were ready. It's a transition before you were ready as you've defined it. So let's dig into a little more details here. How would you know that you were ready to move on or to transition? What would need to have happened for you to feel ready?
Great question. Yeah, I think I was getting to the point where I was like, oh, I need a new career challenge, but I would not say that I was like ready to start applying for new jobs and all of that quite yet. Like yeah. And then,
Imagine, by the way, that you were ready. What had to have happened or what would have happened for you to feel like you were ready? We'll keep going on this path in an ideal world because that's the goal here is we want to
mm,
actually craft an ideal, I don't know, set of circumstances for ourselves. Even if externally it's not what we want, we know what at least micro steps we have to take in order to create more of our own personal ideal environment. So let's imagine though that you were ready. What would have had to happen externally or internally for you to feel that way, to make that transition, to start applying for those jobs?
yeah, interesting. Yeah,
No
I
wrong
guess
answers.
I haven't really thought about it since it was so externally imposed.
I could put some words in your mouth here. Would it have been you didn't feel like you accomplished everything you wanted to have accomplished at your last job? Like you had unfinished business?
Yeah, maybe. I think, yeah, there was still projects left that I wanted to do. And I think also some skills that I wanted to build though I don't necessarily think I needed to build them in that specific context, but I think particularly around like managing and supervising people, that's something I've done a lot in unofficial capacities and less so like on paper supervisors. So I think that's a skill and an area I wanted to grow. And then generally my sort of professional confidence and yeah, again, like I don't know that I necessarily thought I needed to, those are things that are ongoing things that I feel like I need to keep going with, but maybe would want to have felt more secure in before I made a job
Mhm.
transition.
Were you feeling professionally confident before?
Probably not.
Okay.
Yeah.
How would you know that you're feeling professionally confident? What would be happening?
Oh, great question. I don't know. That it feels like a you know it when you see it kind of thing, or you know it when you feel it kind of thing. And I certainly have had like moments where I feel like, yeah, I nailed that. Like I showed up as my best professional self and I was like smart and articulate and I got the result that I wanted.
Okay.
But I don't know that like day to day I always feel that way.
Maybe confidence isn't the goal. Maybe we're not even seeking the right things here. And that's why we're having a problem. It could be more I'm looking like we have to completely redefine what professional success and confidence and career security looks like because it's not what we thought it was going to be. And by the way, these moments are just that moments. Tell me with a little more detail, if you don't mind, is the job that you had before when it was the federal government and the job you have now, was this a big pivot? You got the job pretty quickly. So clearly you were qualified here. But
Yeah.
for how you feel, do these jobs look dissimilar?
They do. They're they feel pretty different. The environments are really
Okay.
different. And then my day-to-day work is pretty different. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So there's a learning curve that's happening here. And that's very destabilizing alongside with everything else.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you, I'm sure, put a lot of pressure on yourself to learn quickly. What would make learning easier for you? Or how could you feel more supported in your learning curve?
I, yeah, I feel like there's been a lot of emphasis, like in my Oregon, like we are learning things. We're like, we don't expect people to be perfect. We like want you to make mistakes and learn things. And then, but then it's actually not like that value isn't lived, if that, yeah, if that makes sense.
You're
Yeah.
talking
So I
about the
think,
there's the like performance and perception of work, and then there's the actual work. And these things can
yeah,
be different, right? There's people who we know are not very good at their job, aka mediocre white men. Sorry, not sorry to those men, but they get promotions anyway, right? Because they can perform work. It's also called office politics, right? So I actually put them in different buckets and they're different skill sets. In continuing to focus just on the work itself, the reason I ask you how do we support you better in your learning curve? That's the creation of the ideal environment so that you can then create the ideal career. But environment comes first. Environment is the day to day. And sometimes we don't feel supported by the external. So, first, we got to make sure we're feeling supported on the internal. So, for you, knowing that you're navigating all these different factors, again, from the workplace itself and how they're operating to what your tasks in the day to day actually are, just stepping outside of yourself for a second, if you had a little guide with you, or me, like I'm your pocket coach with you coming to work and I'm sitting there on your desk with you and you're like, God dang, this is new or this is hard or whatever it is. What could I tell you? I'm almost like, I used to, by the way, when I was coaching, I used to just tell people what I thought they should do. And that's not a very good coaching. It's efficient, but it's not always right or the thing that
yeah,
will sustain you because you are unique. And in a way, you've got to actually figure out the answers for yourself. You have to craft your ideal plan of how do I best support myself in this learning curve specific to me and my idiosyncrasies, my Enneagram, my how I show up in the world. Yeah, that learning curve, if you want to get a specific example for yourself of in the past 6 months, there was something new that you were trying to navigate, how could you have made it more easeful or supported? Because I do want to get, without specifics, we can't make a plan. So let's look
Yeah.
back at the past. Give me those learning curves that you navigated and how could we do it better moving forward?
Yeah. I think one that comes to mind is like gentleness with myself and leaving room for learning and it being okay that it's not perfect. I think, yeah, I'm very hard on myself, and I also find sometimes when I don't know the right thing to do, I get pretty paralyzed
Ah,
by that.
okay. Okay. All right. By the way, how's that been working for you? And I don't say
Not well.
that. Yeah, and I don't,
Yeah,
and I know it's a kind of a funny, haha, you can probably think of ways it's not working for you, but what it has worked in some capacity. Otherwise, you wouldn't have held on to it as a coping mechanism. So, in
yeah,
being hard on yourself, how is that an advantage, would you say? Or what benefit has that perhaps brought for you in the past?
yeah. I think there's lots of ways in which that's motivating or keeps me working hard. Yeah,
Okay.
I have always been a very achievement oriented person. And then it's fine, or like I get to the achievement and am dissatisfied.
Okay. So, one thing I find very helpful to do this in the morning is look at your schedule for the day and say, all right, what do I have on tap today? What meetings, what projects are due, what work tasks need to be accomplished? And then check in with the parts of yourself that tend to get quite loud. So if it's the inner critic who's hard on you, or the part that gets paralyzed, or just anticipate they're going to be there. And by the way, they're your inner teammates, right? Just like you're trying to
Yeah.
navigate the team around you, you're also needing to navigate the team inside you. And you check in with them and you give them a heads up. Hey, this is what we're doing today. I know you're going to have an opinion. By the way, I welcome it. We're not here to tell them to shut up because guess what? They won't, or it'll go into your subconscious and fuck you up in a different way. So you're like, all right, I see you. I feel you. Thank them for working hard. And then ask them a question that, by the way, you don't necessarily have to seek an answer for. But the power comes in asking the question, which I think is a big theme of today with you, is there's a lot of questions. We're not going to force answers. We're going to let your body and mind come to conclusions in the next couple of weeks. You're going to ask these parts, what is a softer version? What is a more collaborative way in which you can help me that honors your intention, right? You exist as the inner critic for a positive reason. However, there's been a negative outcome, which oftentimes your inner critic, it makes me stressed or anxious. All right, appreciate the intention. What's a different way we could go about this? Okay. And you may have an answer for it, by the way. Your inner critic, you could might visualize it turning into an inner cheerleader where it's still motivating you. It's saying you can do it. You got it. I want you to work hard, but it's the voice is a different sort of, how do I put this? Like it's just like in a different register. Your voice is in a different register, right? Instead of yelling at you, maybe it's saying the same words, just not yelling. Okay. Or maybe you have no answer. But again, the act of asking the question is you practicing getting into the driver's seat, you reminding these parts inside of you that you are the leader and they are there to offer guidance, but you are the guide ultimately. Okay. So again, the act of checking in with them and asking this question does a lot of the work. Then later on, as you go throughout the day and up there, you're sitting in the meeting or you're getting the email, a part gets triggered and it's doing its thing, thank it, softer version. Thank it, softer version. That is the only next step you need to take as it regards to this. That is going to take care of 90% of the inner turmoil. And then you can step back and say, this is the process of the learning curve. This is navigating. This accomplishes your goal, as you stated, of gentleness with myself. It's okay that it's not perfect. How do I, the process of the learning curve? This is the process of the learning curve. It's not that we externally and internally, we have it all figured out. No, it is that we are trying to figure it out. This is where growth happens. Like you are in the middle of growth, actually. You're not stuck at all. Okay. You're not stuck at all.
Yeah.
Just quote, moving on before you were ready. Heck, if you were ready to move on, there's not much growth there. It's
Yeah.
actually the fact that it was abrupt is giving you an opportunity to stretch your comfort zone and gain way more life skills, actually, that will serve you better in the longer run. Like right now, what's happening for you, I think, is teaching you new ways of sustainable work. Because if you're very hard on yourself and you're achievement oriented, and you actually have a great track record of achieving, well, sometime that runs out. You burn out, or you're in a terrible environment and you're not set up to succeed and you can't achieve. And then you question your self worth. And like a crisis is coming. Okay. That's why
Mm.
I don't mean to scare anybody watching, listening, or you, but so many of us end up having these kind of breakdowns because we weren't all along the way checking in with our own learning curves, seeing, where do I stretch myself here? And I don't think it's a question of do you feel confident or not. Think, again, I'm going to go back to your words. It's the moments of not feeling confident, moments of feeling confident. It's not a permanent state. Like, now I feel fine. I've arrived. Now I feel secure. Then growth has stopped if we're there. So
Mm.
we're just trying to seek a more compassionate way of going from moments to moments, whether they're what we want or not, almost doesn't matter. I'm going to stop right there, though, and just confirm that my caffeine has kicked in and I'm making somewhat sense here. So tell me what's resonating or not, and always wanting to turn this into something action oriented.
Yeah, the piece about I'm maybe never gonna arrive, right? I'm never gonna be like, oh, I feel, professionally competent or capable. Like that is maybe that's maybe not the most realistic goal, but like more moments that I feel that way than not. And
And how you come back
um,
from the ones that you're not. So when you're having these experiences of it, is this the right move or the right decision or whatever, it's actually not about if the decision's right or not. It's what's your process for deciding. Are you creating space? Have you created the correct environment to even come to the best conclusion? Are you being compassionate to yourself as you wrestle these things? Do you know how to weigh options? Have you gathered enough information? It's again, it's less about the outcome and more about the process. Apologies, I cut you off though.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I guess that what it makes me think is what I want is to be able to make this next step and move in a way that feels sustainable and authentic and like where what I want and is like what I'm listening to and prioritize and not like the rest of the external noise or the internal noise or the like self-doubt part of
Mhm.
me or really like harsh critic, but where yeah.
I love that you said sustainable and authentic. I'm a really big fan of choosing adjectives that if we were to feel them, they would make our life, whether it's I feel well in my life and career, or I feel proud of my life and career. Like, what do you need to be feeling in order to get there? And when you pick adjectives, and I usually say, let's pick two or three. So we'll just go off of sustainable and authentic for the time being. It's then you can brainstorm what daily actions do I need to take that support those.
Mm-hmm.
Because, by the way, sustainable and authentic, the way I define it could be different from the way you define it. Probably not. It does allow you to say, all right, let's get as specific as possible in taking a somewhat abstract concept and making it extremely actionable. So, even in, let's talk about Monday, because today's Friday. So, on Monday, what could be some actions that you take that would lead to sustainability and authenticity for you?
Yeah.
And by the way, before you answer it, something I'm going to be listening for as a next step for us to take is we would then say, based on the actions that you describe that support these desired adjectives, how much of them are in your control versus other people? Because I know we do need to talk about other people since you're not feeling quite supported. So there is the performing of work piece that needs to be addressed here. So I do want to make that clear. Yeah, sustainable and authentic. What are you doing to follow through on that in your life and in your career?
Yeah. I really like this idea about checking in with myself and having like really intentional planning time that's not just about these are the 5 meetings I have today, but who's loud today? Which voice is loud today? And yeah, and figuring out.
Yeah, how am I showing up to these meetings first and
Yeah,
foremost within myself? And then how am I showing up externally? Totally.
yeah. And then I think also like dedicated time to reflect on things like, oh, I feel like I went to that meeting and this whole new project just got shoved onto me, but I wanted to say no. Like, how do I, like, either, like, where do I go from here? Or how do I like, prevent this from happening in the first or like the next time?
And then channel the ideal state you want. So when you imagine this, we'll use the word confident because you did, you slash the coach, right? How would they tackle this? That can also be helpful because if you're feeling stuck, oh gosh, I should have said no. How do I say no? It's all right. You racked with self doubt is struggling to say no. But if you were a confident, and I want you to get even more specific and granular when it, like, what does confident even look and feel like? How would they do it? That may help you get outside of yourself by literally channeling a different version of you.
Yeah.
Could be helpful. Let's quickly talk about what you said earlier. I quote, feel unequipped and overwhelmed to step into a leadership role. I'm going to ask you something similar that I asked before, but imagining that you feel equipped and ready, or whatever opposite adjectives are to what you want to feel here, okay? First, this is going to be just a 1 minute exercise for you, but you should take some time afterwards and do it for longer. Closing your eyes, imagining what does, and I'll just say equipped and ready, okay, or confident. What does that actually feel like in your body? And you had said earlier to me, there was something you said of like, when I'd asked you about professional confidence, like, how do you know when you'll have it or feel it? And you're like, we'll just know when it hits me or feel it, right? And there's also something to be said about you don't know something until it happens. And if you haven't really had that experience in a really deep sense, it might be difficult to imagine it. So you're going to really do your best. If you can't project into the future, try to find something in your past, a moment that you felt this way. Okay. So again, equipped and ready. You felt equipped and ready. And if it was a moment that you felt it, we're going to turn that moment into a minute. Okay, like 60 seconds. And every body part that you possibly can, maybe starting from the top of your head down to the tippy toes. What does it feel like to be equipped and ready? The reason I want to have you and anybody watching and listening channel these adjectives in your body is you're not going to believe it until you deeply feel it. You just won't because we can stay in an intellectual conversation and do mindset shifts, but they don't last. You know, people have aha moments. They're just that, they're a moment, right? It's until it feels familiar in your body, in your nervous system, then you will start to believe, I am that person. I have the capacity to be equipped and ready, not just because I proved it on paper, but you have to feel it in your body to believe it. Okay. Once you do that, then I want to talk about, all right, how do we get other people, how do we make it easier for you to feel equipped and ready? We don't have time here to go into detail on all the things that you could be doing for yourself and the mindset and body stuff that we just talked about, but let's talk about the other people in the organization. How do we get them on board to make it easier for you to feel equipped and ready? And we're going to get into their shoes, by the way. We're going to now channel them as best as we possibly can, all the things that they're concerned about. What are their anxieties? What are their priorities? What are their goals? What are their roadblocks? What are their dreams? Again, as best as we can imagine it. And as you think about this stuff, you may realize, I don't actually know. So this is when you would say, my next step, it's not to make any plans, but it's to make plans for conversations. I need to gather more information from them. I need to have a 20-minute, 30-minute coffee chat learning more about, hey, what do you have next quarter going on? How can I best support you? You can almost think about it not just as information gathering, but ally building. How? Not because you're presenting anything to them, you're simply listening. They just want to feel heard, right? So, again, always keeping in mind, how do you want to feel? But how do they want to feel? And the gap to bridge is that it's getting another person to believe that your goals and theirs are aligned, and that by collaborating in a better way, you can achieve both of your priorities in a more efficient way. We got to get people to buy into you. Okay. It's not just buying into the good work, but it's you. Just it's ironic. It's like in order for them to buy into you, they have to feel that you have bought into them. It's all politics. Okay. So, having shared all that, how does it relate to your situation? What can we imagine as a next step with your team or people in different departments, leadership, etc.? How can we connect in a different way with them that would make it more easeful for you to feel equipped and ready?
Yeah.
And if you're not sure, by the way, of what, if you're thinking to yourself, if I knew that answer, I wouldn't have reached out to you, Claire, totally fine. We can start with what's not working, right? Like, where is the resistance to helping you feel equipped and ready?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know that I thought about this until just now, but that I have been thinking of it as like me versus them instead of, okay, we're all people who care deeply about this organization. How can we navigate this moment together instead of these people are my enemies in getting where I want to go. Or
Wow.
enemies feels like a strong word, but
No. I think it's apt. I think this is brilliant because listen, you're not feeling equipped and ready. You wrote, I feel
yeah,
unequipped and overwhelmed. They may be feeling the same thing, first of all.
yeah,
Okay. Or they may be feeling like you're not supporting them. I would always start with what do we have in common? This is when I kind of laugh at when I think about I have twin brothers, what they do for a living, and one brother is in the State Department. He lives in Moscow now. So very high level diplomacy. And I laugh when I think about it because I'm like, same thing here, but it just within a company. It's still diplomacy, which by the way, you
yeah,
used to work for the government. Like you're actually really well primed for all of this stuff. You probably had to deal with like massive bureaucracy and politicking, literally. So what do we have in common, right? Let's connect with the other person first, even if we don't like them. We all have something in common. And of course, starting with we work for this organization. We want to feed our families, right? Maybe we even want to do good. What do we have in common? And then what's their style of communication? Because that goes back to my earlier comment of perception of work is everything. Perception is everything, I think. So even if you all have, I don't know, similar goals and priorities or whatever, but you can't communicate them to each other, then it almost doesn't really matter. So do you have a good sense of how these people like to be spoken to or how they like to do work in a collaborative way?
yeah, not really. I think in part because I'm so new to the organization, but in part because I haven't had a lot of my own, like a lot of it has been filtered through other hierarchies.
Yep. I would really recommend a listening tour. I think what happened here is the transition was really fast and you felt like you needed to jump in and prove yourself quickly. And actually, the first step I always recommend when somebody joins an organization is introduce yourself. And in that introduction, which these are usually one on one meetings, it might feel tedious, by the way. We're like, oh God, I just want to do my work. Trust me, this is like doing an investment in your retirement. If you don't put some money away now, you're going to be screwed over later, which is what's happening here. Not that you're screwed over, but you're in a holding pattern, right? You're like, you want a thing and it's happening and you don't know the next step for it. So let's just like back up. It's never too late to do this, by the way, ever. I do recommend doing it in the beginning, but you got it now. Hey, I want to spend, hey, can I like take you out for coffee or do a virtual Zoom? I want to learn in more specific detail what you're working on and see where I can better support you and also share some stuff that I'm doing. You'll put it in your own words, but make this about them and supporting them. And it's a bit similar to my exercise in the morning of just asking your teammates what's up. How do they feel about what's on the agenda? The very act of doing that, of just asking the question, already makes that person feel closer to you and more willing to collaborate. And then you're going to get some valuable information. But again, know that the act of doing these meetings in and of itself has value. So you take a little pressure off of like the outcome. Okay. And if you want to have a standing meeting saying, hey, every once a month, let's check in. I'm not trying to add things to people's plates, but just like, where do you think we can overlap better? Who knows? This is where you're building allies. You might have an idea that's going to get you to the next level, but you're not an island. You got to get their help on the idea. You got to get them to be invested. This is the groundwork for all of that. You could also ask things like, hey, you've been here longer. What has been your experience with the process of getting a salary adjustment when the workload isn't commensurate?
Yeah.
There is so much information that needs to be gained that you can't achieve your way to information. I'm going to say that again. You can't achieve your way to information.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
might be somewhat of the gap here where you're like, I know how to do things well, but it's not getting me what I want, which means we need to learn how to do different things in a different way. I'm going to pause right there. Tell me, where do you feel like, if anything, you need some extra support, or do you feel like you have enough food for thought to like on Monday do a couple of things differently, both within yourself and with your teammates?
Yeah. I did those like one-on-one meetings with people at my level and more junior than me, but not with leadership, in part because that was like not the way, right? It was like the hierarchy mattered. And so it, like, I don't know, I was not encouraged to do that, that like things went through my chain of command instead of like me going directly to leadership. So there is that norm around hierarchy in my org that I'll have to keep navigating. But
Here's the thing. Is it a nonprofit, by the way, or for profit?
nonprofit, yeah.
Nonprofit. Okay. Even if it's a nonprofit, there's a board of advisors that y'all need to answer to, and you are making profit. You're just reinvesting it into the company. Okay. So
Right.
the reason I think everybody needs to be talking to people above them in these, hey, what are you doing and how can I support you better? Also, how can I best understand how my work leads to your work and your work leads to my work, is if you don't intimately know how you're contributing to effectively the business bottom line, A, personally, you're not getting the raise and the promotion that you want, but B, the company's actually going to suffer for it because otherwise you're all working in silos. And so getting an understanding from leadership who's maybe most directly tied to business bottom line, you need that information. It will only benefit the company. I shouldn't say only, it's benefiting you too. But I think it's how you contextualize what you're doing. So you're not just
Yeah.
putting meetings on calendars or informing people, you're saying, here's why. And if the why is in benefit to the company, it's going to be a lot harder for somebody to want to deny that or argue with it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Or if you're like, okay, I've been here now for X number of months and I have a better sense of what my process is, but I see some gaps in efficiency, or maybe you don't even want to call that out. You're just like, I see there are opportunities to improve how I'm doing things. And I think understanding in more specific detail, whatever, like you'll figure out the words, but just contextualize it for the people that you need to. You can also just do things and see what happens. Because listen, you're in a shit situation anyway, right? You're in a holding pattern. Like you're doing a
Yes.
job. It could go better. You could be compensated better. Not great. How do we make change? But I genuinely think it's, can I try something that's different? Like this path ain't working.
Yeah.
And then also, by the way, if like path B feels too big and scary, what would be like path B minus? Is there an interim path? Or what are, again, I know you came to me for the steps, but what's the information you need to gather that would make path B clear? And then just focus on that. So if it's not having a conversation with the biggest person at the company, right? Who is it? Their executive assistant or somebody who's been there for 1,000 years, talking to them and getting insight from them on the big person. That's why I'll circle back to how I began is whatever like the paths are, there's so many more. And taking those steps absolutely do count. And I do think if you take as many micro steps as possible, then the big steps may just fall into place and you don't need to stress as much about them. It won't feel like a huge decision because you've already been walking that path to begin with. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I think we've been chatting for some time here, so I'm going to just pause. And in our closing, this definitely begets a longer coaching session. I would want to get into like more specifics than I think I'd feel comfortable with doing on a public forum because I want to really get into the details. So I want to stop there because I do think the specifics will be what you need to like fully take the next steps. But I feel comfortable that I gave buckets to look at. Plus, by the way, the Substack that goes along with this, everything will be written out, all the key insights, takeaways. There will also be a 7-day, what I call progress plan that goes with this of daily exercises you could take that will support those big insights that we uncovered. Is there anything you'd want to say or share or ask in our closing minutes, though?
No, I don't think so. Yeah, lots to think about and lots of different perspectives that, yeah, that I haven't been seeing. So thank you.
Okay, good. I'm so glad that you reached out. Just such a big believer in getting outside perspective because we are way too close to ourselves, every single one of
Yeah.
us. I appreciate you so much, and I'll talk to you soon.